Now, we don't have to read very far to come by today's lessons, and they're in verse 4, where it says this. We're kind of reading part of his journal here. As soon as I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days, and I continued fasting and praying before the God of heaven. I want you to stop right there, because all the teaching points we want to draw out this morning hang on this one verse. These words tell us where life change begins. There's three attitudes that Nehemiah had to have in place before God could use him. And it's the same three attitudes that you and I need to have in our hearts if we're going to change our lives for the better, if we're going to take Bridgeway and move it into a better place. These three attitudes need to be visible among us. And they're all reflected in these words: wept and mourned, fasted, and prayed. So let's dive in. Attitude number one is this: to rebuild our lives for the better, to rebuild our church for the better. We first must have an attitude of holy discontent. Holy discontent. If I'm ever going to change my life and move it in a positive and godly direction, then I have to feel first, deep down in my bones, holy discontent. I've got to be fed up with the way things are in my life. Nehemiah says that upon hearing about the condition of the people back in Jerusalem, he sat down and he wept and he mourned for days. He loved his people. And life change seldom happens unless you feel something similar inside of you. The sensation that something is wrong and it has to be changed, and it has to be changed now. Like I said, everybody's feeling that right now when it comes to their bodies, you know. And it's true that health club membership always spikes the 1st of January. You know why that is? Because people are getting up this morning. It often happens on January 3rd or 4th. They get up, and what do? They get on the weight scale, they look down, and they scream. And they kick the scale, and then they kick the cat and dog, and they're filled with urgency, and they up and they go join a health club. I saw the first ad for Planet Fitness just this weekend. They're already advertising for the new year. And why is that? Because they're feeling discontent with their lives. And that's the way it is for us. We won't change our lives until this happens. Something has to rock our world before we change our world. But here's the thing, it has to be holy discontent. Holy discontent. Some people feel discontent with their lives, but they immediately launch into behaviors that are unholy, that are self-destructive. They fall into depression. They turn to alcohol or drugs. They binge on food. They binge on shopping. They resort to violence. They pursue the affair. There are just countless number of ways for people to take their disgust with life and then turn around and make things 1,000 times worse. Holy discontent is when we use that disgust we feel, that dissatisfaction we feel, and we use it to propel us and move us in good and godly directions, to lead us to a precious place where healing can begin, and the Bible calls that repentance. The Bible tells us that repentance happens when we first feel godly sorrow. Paul said that to the Corinthians. Godly sorrow, holy discontent, leads us to repentance and to healing. Now, here's a question. How do we come by holy discontent, besides getting on the weight scale? Notice back in verse 2, when Nehemiah's brother Hanani comes to him, Nehemiah writes, I asked him about the exiles. I asked him about Jerusalem. Here's how holy discontent comes about. Write this down. It comes when we begin asking honest questions about our lives. Change cannot begin. Repentance cannot occur until we have the guts to look in the mirror and be honest about what we're seeing there. And then, more importantly, asking, why is that there? Why am I struggling with this? Why is this happening? Why do I act this way? Is there anything I am doing that is leading to this outcome? Churches also need to learn to ask honest questions about their life and ministry if they hope to grow stronger in serving God. And 2 years ago, you went through that process, Bridgeway. You were willing to do that. It wasn't easy. But you looked in the mirror And you took that courageous step and you began to ask questions about the trouble that you were seeing and the danger you were in. Far too many people and far too many churches do not have the courage to ask honest questions about their life. They just pretend it's not there, and they go the other direction. And the thing is about Nehemiah, he didn't have to ask these questions. He could have chosen to remain happily ignorant about the true condition of his homeland. According to verse 1, where did Nehemiah live? You see this? Nehemiah says he lived in Susa, what's that? Susa, the citadel. What's a citadel? It's a palace. It's a place that is secure and safe and comfortable. Nehemiah had a great gig here, being the cupbearer to the king. His life was set. He was on Easy Street. His address was Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, if that means anything to you. He had no worries. Most people spend all their lives trying to get exactly to the place that Nehemiah was at. We spend our times trying to build up our own citadels, trying to get to a place in life where we're safe and secure and, I don't have to worry anymore. Nehemiah was there. He was living it. But he knew that there was something more to his life than just being safe. He knew God had a higher purpose for him than just being rich or comfortable or secure. And so he had the courage to ask those questions. And he allowed the honest answers he got back to upset him and disturb him. Nehemiah is on his way to a life change.